Jack is back, and I am reading a few pages out of chapter 2, A Conspiracy of Bafflement. Customary use of artifice is the sign of a small mind, and it almost always happens that he who uses it to cover one spot uncovers himself in another. From La Rochefoucauld Maximes. It is impossible to understand the mystery of Jack the Ripper without an understanding of the Freemasonry. Masonry permeates every fiber of this conundrum, both as its inspiration and its stooge. To acquiesce to the proposition of this scandal as an impenetrable mystery is to prostrate one's intellect before the savageries of Victorian spin. The mystery is a manipulation, a piece of propaganda, like calling Nixon's great felony the Watergate mystery, as I'm sure many among that gentleman's associates would have been pleased to do. "We are all the president's men," said Henry Kissinger, and no less were England's ruling elite all the widow's men. This reminds me of a movie from 2014 called The Kingsman. The degree of control this unique criminal exercised is indicated by the efforts of those who would still seek to protect him. Like courtiers from beyond the grave, they are essentially blameless, but also fools. Freemasonry may never have asked for Jack the Ripper. It certainly did not. But a combination of circumstance and moral turpitude made it his stupefied guardian. Concealing the Ripper was not a Masonic conspiracy, but a conspiracy of Her Majesty's executive, who almost without exception were Freemasons. In other words, it was a conspiracy of the system. The man they were required to be baffled by was in-house, and unquestionably reveling in the security he'd spun about himself. The Ripper was smart, but not that smart. It is simply an insult to the Victorian police to believe that detectives like Moore, Reed, and Aberline couldn't have caught this prick in their sleep. It goes without saying that there was nothing laudable about being a Victorian Mason, any more than it was improper to enjoy membership of a tricycle club. But as I have said, this narrative is about the bad guys, and about one in particular who went rotten, and what that did to the rest of the barrel. Beyond that, I have no opinion on Freemasonry, no animosity towards it, no motive to wish it ill. My interest in Masonry is only inasmuch as it relates to the mystery of Jack the Ripper. By the late 19th century, the quasi-religious, highly conservative society was a power in the land, perhaps the most powerful, because of its ability to insinuate itself into powerful institutions: Parliament, the police, the press, the judiciary, and the crown. It's worth reiterating that the heir to the throne, Bro Edward, Prince of Wales, was the most powerful Freemason on earth. His chancellor, Bro Lord Halsbury, was the most powerful law lord, and Bro Sir Charles Warren, the most senior copper in the Metropolitan Police. Excepting Home Secretary Matthews and possibly Salisbury himself, every man at the Viscount's cabinet table had sworn the Masonic oath. The Prime Minister's organic antipathy to democracy was generally well served by this cabal. In parallel with the elected government, the hidden constructs of Freemasonry facilitated a clandestine executive underpinning the power of the ruling class. A government within a government, as the American historian Henry Austin called it. At its head were the royals and estate-owning aristocrats, with their House of Lords, its laws, bishops, and judges. At its servile root, an army of pecksniffs, the town councillors, provincial chief constables, coroners, aldermen, magistrates, and mayors. Throughout the kingdom, Freemasonry had managed a truly breathtaking infiltration of municipal and political representation. The provincial Grand Master, more often than not, an area's MP. Thus, from the remotest little town to the grandest of cities, the English political system was inalienably connected to a terminus of power of which the electorate knew nothing, and nobody was saying anything about. It was the secrecy of Freemasonry that allowed this occult telegraph to survive, which at the time of Jack the Ripper was hardwired into the nucleus of government. It is a paradox of this narrative that before investigating a murderer, we must investigate the policeman who was pretending to hunt him. So here we have a picture of this policeman, Sir Charles Warren, at the age of 48. There he is in all his glory and all his splendor. And now we're going to skip a few pages and travel back in time to look at the beginnings of this Sir Warren. As a young man, Captain Warren of the Royal Engineers was motivated by a duo of passions. It distorts neither to construe them as one. They were, as he saw them, the complementary sciences of biblical and Freemasonic research. He was driven to prove that Freemasonry was of similar stuff to the Bible, and that by investigation of one, the other could somehow be validated. Such wishful thinking came together in the Holy Land. And here Warren is, in his own words, exploring a 3,000-year-old subterranean conduit in the guts of Jerusalem. So yeah, and here comes, this is a little excerpt of his notes. The water was running with great violence, 1 foot in height, and we, crawling full length, were up to our necks in it. One hand necessarily wet and dirty, the other holding a pencil, compass, and field book, the candle for the most part in my mouth. Another 50 feet brought us to a place where we had to run the gauntlet of the waters. The passage being only 1 foot 4 inches high, we had just 4 inches of breathing space. Wow. Warren was digging his way into the Old Testament under the auspices of the Palestine Exploration Fund. The PEF had been funded by various worthies and religious executives, including the Freemasons, as a society for the accurate and systematic investigation of the archaeology, the topography, the geology, and physical geography, the manners and customs of the Holy Land, for biblical instruction. Founded in 1865, its membership grew rapidly, with signatures that would include a roll call of notables, including the Archbishop of Canterbury and the great sculptor/painter Sir Frederick Leighton. From its inception, the society had an advocate of burning enthusiasm in its co-founder and first secretary, the 44-year-old George Grove. Trained originally as an engineer, Grove emerged as one of the great Victorians, a man capable of transforming enthusiasms into practicality in whatever area his humanity pleased. He was said to have known much of the Bible by heart. Thus it was natural for him to write a concordance, plus about 1,000 pages of the Standard Bible Dictionary. If it interested him, Grove got it done. Wasn't that convenient? His work from first to last, wrote the novelist and historian Walter Besant, was literally a labor of love. Knighted in 1883, Sir George Grove comes out of the 19th century like an engine of benevolence. His infatuation with all things musical brought London its Royal College of Music, and his Dictionary of Music and Musicians is still internationally recognized as the standard work on the subject. I have always been a mere amateur in music, he claimed with customary modesty. I wrote about symphonies and concertos because I wish to try and make them clear to myself and to discover the secret of the things that charmed me. Short on charm, but full of secrets, were the vast underground ruins of what some believed were the remains of Solomon's temple at Jerusalem. In 1866, Grove approached the War Office on behalf of the PEF for archaeological assistance and got 26-year-old Captain Warren in response. It was a fortuitous liaison. The following year, together with his wife and little daughter and a handful of NCOs, Bro Warren and his party set sail for the Holy Land. It was somewhat in the role of a crusader that Warren accepted the charge, wrote his grandson and biographer Watkin Williams. As he was stirred by a longing to reveal to the Christian world those sacred places hidden in the debris of many a siege and jealously guarded by the Turkish Mussulmans. More accurately, Warren's eagerness was in no small part because he was a member of the Knights Templar. The story of that body's God-forsaken origins at the time of the Crusades needs little retelling here. For about 200 years in the Middle Ages, the good guys, in this case the Christians, fought the bad guys, in this case the Muslims, for possession of the Holy Lands around Jerusalem. In the 11th century, the Turks had usurped control of Palestine and put their god in charge. Christian pilgrims were no longer welcome, and the proposition of liberating the birthplace of the cross from the thraldom of the crescent began to resonate as a good idea. A mentally abnormal priest called Peter the Hermit went about Europe inciting a holy war. "It's the voice of God!" he shrieked, when in fact it was the voice of the Pope, Urban II in Rome. The result was misery without end for a God that didn't give a monkey's, urged on in atrocity by religious fanatics called popes. The insanity went on and on. Tens of thousands would bleed their lives away, suffering every conceivable inhumanity. In 1099, under the banner of a French knight called Godfrey de Bouillon, the Muslims were temporarily driven from the holy city and the real estate returned to Christ. Great congratulation and instant myth were bestowed upon the soldiers of the cross. After the usual protocols of butchery and rape, a barracks was constructed in their honor on the site of Solomon's temple, the exalted house of the Lord. And the fame of the knighthood of the Temple of Solomon began to spread through the enlightened Christian world. It was primarily in Europe, most especially France, that the returning knights evolved into the Templars. Initially received as heroes, but later reviled, outcast, imprisoned, and sometimes burned to a cinder by papal diktat, the Knights Templar had to put up shutters to survive. They became a secret society, and over the centuries they developed into what is understood in the higher degrees as Christian Freemasonry. Yeah, that's it for today. See you next time.